Okay, so again, nice to see all of our friends and colleagues here. And I would like to introduce Israel and the senior lecturer in history at Sha'anan College. He is an affiliated research fellow at the Center for Collective Violence, Holocaust
Daniela,
memory
you have
and
a problem. You have a
historiography
problem.
in their social and cultural context. Can you hear me well?
Not always, but
Now, yes.
They know me, so just finish it.
Okay, so Boaz, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you. This is the issue of I want to talk about is this one. Was there a war against the Jewish child? Now, I've been always thinking about this issue since I started working on Holocaust children. And I've been asking people in conferences, do you think there was a war against the Jewish child? And some would say, of course not. And some would say, of course, yes. The term itself, wait, there's a terrible spelling mistake. The term itself is born from books from the immediate post-war period, where you can find books titled in Hebrew or other languages, "The War Against the Jewish Child." And the questions, I think, are these. What was the place of Jewish children in Nazi extermination policy? Verena has shown us very nicely that they were there. How much resources were the Germans willing to use to deal with Jewish children? And were Jewish children targeted specifically during the Holocaust? So I've always tried to write a paper in this, and I was always stuck until this war, where I suddenly understood what a war is. So now I can speak. I've written something which I will not show you, but this is organize my ideas. Generally, war is hell. This war was waged between nations. Armies were doing the fighting, but civilians, women, men, and children were all victims of it. Sometimes targeted directly, civilians, not only Jews, like when you bomb area bombing of cities, and sometimes as collateral damage. We heard yesterday about the bombing of French train yards, marshalling yards, where it was obvious that there will be tens and thousands of French dead, and there were. So sometimes you directly want to hit civilians. Sometimes it's collateral damage in acts of war, where you target enemy combatants or installations. The Jewish victims were not killed in World War II as a byproduct of the war. The Nazis and their allies waged an all-out war against the Jews, aiming at destruction or obliteration of the entire people. This concept termed by Conf, a world without Jews. Children were Jews, therefore they had to die, like all other Jews, men, women, young and old. So I claim there was a war against the Jewish child. So what I think now, I think I can say that, and Verena has shown us a bit of it, is that when we say the war against the Jewish child, we mean, in my view, that there were policies and acts of war directed specifically against children. Policies, this starts with the Nazi gaining power, and I will talk about this in a moment. Acts of war, so I didn't go to books of military theory, but I tried to explain what an act of war is as I saw it in the last months, through being in in the headquarters of a combat brigade fighting in Gaza. So in war is not only the armed confrontation of soldiers, the exchange of fire between troops and the overcoming of one side by the other. When I was a regular soldier, a company soldier in the paratroops, this is what I saw. War is like the soldier from one side attacking and prevailing over the soldier from the other side. And what I can say now is that war, in order to get to a battle operation, is a process in which many are taking part as a part of a system. So a process culminating with organized murder of Jewish children starts with a policy decision at a very high level, certain high level. The issue of the specific group of children is discussed and a decision to murder them is taken. Then a plan must be drawn up. What unit or units will carry out the murder? A platoon, a company, troop, battalion? Who is in charge? The commanders of the chosen unit have to be briefed and presented with the mission. They need to discuss the various aspects of the actions with their staff. Logistical questions have to be addressed. Is transport needed for the children or for the soldiers? Who will allocate the transport and fuel? Ammunition needs to be allocated. Food for the soldiers for the duration of the action. Is there an available killing site? Do pits need to be dug? Who will dig them? The Jews, the army engineers, or maybe the local non-Jewish population? In the latter case, how will they be made to do it? Will they be forced to dig or rewarded, and how? All these questions are true to all killing actions of Jews and others, of course. But my claim is that when a military or quasi-military system is mobilized to kill Jewish children specifically, when the whole discussion is about Jewish children, then it becomes a war against the Jewish child. Now, I will say, before you ask, other nations subjugated, occupied by the Germans also talked about the war against the Polish child, the war against the French child. Every nation felt that the enemy is targeting its children. But when we look at operations, acts, a policy decision, turning into organized orders that become operations, for example, forced Germanization of racially fit children from occupied countries, or the conscription of Belarusian children to forced labor in the last year of the war. In these cases, these bureaucratic and organized actions were aimed at keeping the children alive, not killing them. So we do have specific policies and actions towards children who are not Jewish. But in this case, the aim is to keep them alive, to Germanize them or to use them for forced labor. Even in Lidice, where there is a massive retaliation by the Germans against the Czech village, the children are kept alive. At least the ones deemed racially viable. The children, so military actions against Jewish children, on the other hand, were meant to kill them. So when we talk about this targeting of Jewish children, this starts with the beginning of the regime. What I claim, although I have yet to show more examples than this one, which is the obvious one, what I claim is that the Nazis gained power on January. By April, we have the law against overcrowding in German schools and universities, which a number of Jewish students in this institution should not exceed 1.5% of the student body. The result is mass expulsion of Jewish students. And Marion Kaplan writes, those who are allowed to stay in school suffered as shown by exclusion and ostracizing the board, the brunt and real anti-Jewish sentiment that permeated the atmosphere in the schools and in the streets. Now, I would say that what we do have paperwork about is there's a big argument in Germany about the fact that officially Jewish children are not thrown out of primary schools, and the parents are fighting against the system. Why are the children there? And we see a lot of paperwork around this issue, because you can't have a Volksgemeinschaft, you can't have the national community if Jews are in the school. So it starts with this, it goes on to playgrounds, as George Eisen has shown in his book, Playing the Holocaust. There's like a sort of a protocol when the Germans take over a town, a city, either Western or Eastern Europe, quite soon, one of the regulations will be the one keeping Jews out of playgrounds. I mean, it's like there's some sort of book somewhere where everyone knows that when you take over a town, you should hit the Jewish children in, of course, close their schools, etc., and make sure they don't get access to a playground. So these are the easiest stuff. It's not small for a child in this situation. What we have next is children actions. For example, the Gesper or the Speer in Lodz in September 1942 resulted in transport of over 15,000 Jews, mostly children under the age of 10 now. I was not looking for testimonies of the children. I'm interested in how the decision was made. And we know from Rumkowski's speech to the people in the ghetto that he was there was a directive to send the children to death, and he's arguing about the age groups with the Germans, and the Germans are adamant that these children have to die. There's a whole discussion on the children. And the whole operation of taking children out of children's homes, it says that this happens also in the Warsaw Ghetto. If we do go to Western Europe, where the Israel raid, Israel is in the Savoy Mountains. On April 6, 1944, 3 vehicles of Gestapo arrived in the orphanage under the command of the Klaus Barbie, the Butcher of Lyon. They apprehend 44 children and 7 supervisors. There's some argument about the exact number, 1 or 2 more. Forcibly loading with awaiting trucks. They are sent to Dancy, and from there to Auschwitz. Most of them are killed. Two older children who are thought to be caretakers, and the superintendent were murdered in Estonia. So this is April 6, 44. Normandy will be in a minute. The war is not going well for the Germans. But the Gestapo in Lyon can have organized transport and manpower. By the way, they work on intelligence too, because they got this intelligence, this notice that there are Jewish children in Izium. And they organize a trip, and they have to allocate vehicles and fuel, etc. This is this is not abundant at this time. And they go and they make sure that these 44 Jewish children will not survive. This is a whole project against a group of Jewish children. There are many more like that. These are just 2 examples. At one point, the Jews are understanding that the Germans are intending to kill Jewish children. This is something written by Manuel Ringenblum. We're going to get news of murder of Jewish children and seniors. This has no precedent in Jewish history apart from Pharaoh. We don't know of any precedent like that. On the contrary, children were always left alive in order to enable their conversion. Even in the dark Middle Ages, there was a spark of humanity in the hearts of killers who spared babies, but this is not the case with the Nazis. So the understanding that killing children and specifically targeting children, he explains why they understand that this is a specific targeting of children, explains the nature of the German policy, the totaliness of it, and also the willingness to do something that in world culture, whether it's Islam or Christianity or whatever, there is no big honor in killing children. We don't see a knight does not get honor by killing a child. And a child is a financial asset and a spiritual asset if you convert him. So why? Okay, I want to rush to one specific event that has made a great impression on me. When I worked more on it, I saw that a lot of researchers mentioned this event. This is the massacre in Biela Cherkov. The Biela Cherkov is 70 miles from Kiev. The adults in the Jewish adults in the village were already murdered.
I'm sorry, Boaz, can you share the PowerPoint again where you can't see the slide you're talking about?
I am sorry. So we are talking about Biela Cherkov. The story is takes the whole. The story is a story of staff officers, commanders, planning, arguments between different units. Everything that happens in an army, you have there. Starts with 2 divisional chaplains from brigade to from the division command post going the 295 infantry division. They are going. They are visiting the troops. They see in the village of Biela Cherkov, they see 90 Jewish children locked up in a house in the town for 24 hours without any food or water. The story is that the parents were already murdered. Some children were already murdered too, but by accident, these children were left alive. So I will rush through the events until I will go to the last meeting they have. So when he hears, so this officer, Lieutenant Colonel Gruskurs, he goes there to see what's going on. Now he doesn't go alone. He takes with him the ordnance officer of the Lieutenant Spurhase. So that means the ordnance officer and the chief staff officer of the division, whatever that works in Israel, in current divisions, head of staff of the division, they go to check what's going on. They go to, when they are there, enters the scene an officer from Obersturmführer Jager from the SD, and he explains that the children are going to be murdered. So this guy, the Lieutenant Colonel Gorskov, goes to the area commander, the Feld Commandant, Lieutenant Colonel Riedel, and he says, "What's going on?" So Riedel tells him, "Look, this is, I can't interfere. This is the SD, the SS. They do what they want, and they notify me that they are going to kill them. And if I'm sure they got their orders from the top people." So he requests to seal the area of the house so that soldiers will not be able to see what's going on. Also to that when the transport will come to take the children, to make sure no one is there. And then he goes up to the army group. 259 Division belongs to the 6th Army, the German 6th Army, the one who is destroyed in Stalingrad. By the way, Gorskos himself is caught by the Russians in Stalingrad and never goes home. And so he goes up to the army group, which is like Army Group South, the top German force, and he goes to the headquarters up there, talks with the operations officer and says, "What's going on?" So they tell him, "You should talk with the operations officer of the 6th Army. 6th Army is commanded by von Reichenschau." So he goes to he talks with him. I don't know how they talk. Well, obviously, they had no phones, so this is all on the radio. I don't know. Or they're all in the same area. And they tell him, look, the army commander of the 6th Army can't talk now. He'll give a decision in the evening. So he says, okay, then don't do anything until the evening. They throw out the SS, and they are all waiting for the order from the army commander. And in the evening, they get the answer from the army commander. The children should be murdered. So this, I'm moving another hero of the story, is the SS Obersturmführer August Hafner. Is also from, they all belong to Sonderkommando 4A of Einsatzgruppen C. So they have a staff meeting. Blobel, his boss, comes. He's the head of the commando, Sonderkommando 4 of the Einsatzgruppen C, and he says, kill the children. I tell him, who will kill the children? He says, the Waffen SS. I said, no, they are young men. How are we going to answer them? Make them shoot small children. So he said, then use your men of the Einsatzgruppen. I can't do that. They have small children as well. This sounds like. This tug of war lasted 10 minutes. So, I mean, they have this staff meeting, and they are having this argument. Probably there was coffee on the table or tea or whatever, the schnapps. And it took 10 minutes to decide one major issue. Who is going to kill the children? They had no problem with the other issues. Who's going to take the children there and stuff? Anyway, they found the excellent solution. The Ukrainians will kill the children. The Ukrainian militia of the Feld Commandant, that means the area commander has the Ukrainian militia, they will kill, no one is objecting. The Ukrainians will do the dirty job. And Hafner has a terrible description of the killing action, which I will not share with you. Very graphic, but there are two issues in his description that I want to mention. First, he says the Wehrmacht had already dug a grave, meaning someone had to dig the pit for the children. They would not dig it themselves. So the army engineers did this. And then someone, the transport officer of the division allocated a tractor. And this brought the children to the Jewish cemetery where they were killed. So, this is a full-fledged war against 90 Jewish children, which is a part of a major war against Jewish children. Now, the Germans felt that they have a problem here. So we have this very well-known speech by Himmler. This is October 1943. There are several translations of this. I chose one. So he tells the Gauern Reich chiefs of the party, and then he tells the same thing to the army chiefs. We are faced with the question, what about the women and children? I decided to find a clear solution to this problem. Say, to kill or have them killed, and then allow the avenger in form of children to grow up for our sons and grandsons. The difficult decision must be made to have these people disappear from the face of the earth. It was the most difficult task we ever had. So this, I think, what we see here very distinctly is Himmler playing for his moral side, like it was really hard. This was a really hard decision. But what could we do? We couldn't leave these children alive. So we had to take the moral decision to kill all those Jewish children. And I think what I tried to say here is that the issue of children was discussed. I did not talk about Foreign Office discussions. This group of children that has a chance to move through Turkey to Palestine. This group of children from France who are not needed as manpower as workers in Auschwitz. So should we deport them? And there's a whole letter exchange about the Jewish children from Down Sea, the orphans. Same with Jewish children from other places. They are now orphans. Their parents are already killed. Who will take care of them? The best thing for them is to kill them. But these are discussions that exist, that are, there's a whole paperwork around this group of Jewish children, about the Jewish children in Darcy, the Jewish children in Israel, the Jewish, a lot of action is around these papers. So yes, I think you could say the Germans were conducting a war against the Jewish child. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And unfortunately, I don't think we have time for questions. Maybe if you have any questions or comments, you can put them on the chat, like I saw several people already did. And we can reconvene again at 5, okay? In about 7 minutes.
Okay.
So see you then. You can stay on the Zoom.